Hello, it's Tails from Studio Wildfire, and I'm back again for another Monday morning map build. Let's just get set up here. So I'm in GIMP. I've made a blank map canvas. So let's view in. Let's zoom, fit to window. There we go. And I better make my folders. The usual 4 that I use. So we've got our, where's my keyboard? Ground. Helps if my keyboard doesn't fall off the table. Ground floor. What is this? This is ground floor walls and features. And how are you doing for your Monday morning? We've had a bit of a commotion here. We had a fella here fixing our washing machine, our clothes washing machine, because Mum wasn't happy with it. It wasn't working the way she wanted it to work, which was unfortunate. Okay, let me just get rid of a few things here. So let me just close that, and that. There we go. All we need is GIMP and my streaming software. Cool. Okay, so one thing I was thinking about doing today is starting a new level, or actually starting to use a different texture set. So a lot of the building I've done so far has been with Dungeon Map Tiles pack 6, which is a cool pack. It looks good. Hang on, if I can just get it to come up. I just want to look at the floor. There we go. So it's a cool looking pack. I like it, but if you do the entire thing in this, it's going to look very same. So what I might do is I might start doing a different level set in a different. I might use the catacombs. Like try a few in the catacombs set, and I'm going to do a different. So whereas before I've had 2 doorways either side of the map. So for example, if I just draw here. So for example, I've had like a doorway here and a doorway here. Or was it here? Or it might have been here. What I'm thinking of doing this time is instead of doing that, I'm just going to have one doorway here. Whoops. Didn't want to do that. So one doorway there. So it'll be, where's center? So here, here, and here on each map tile. It's a big corridor. Like that. And then this will be rooms through here, which will make it look interesting because then when you put these map tiles onto the board and you actually build up a dungeon, it'll look like. Hang on, clear. Make my brush tips smaller. There we go. That's cool. So imagine you've got a dungeon, you're putting down several tiles, and they're all going like this. But then they have, hang on, I'll do up here. So you've made a dungeon and that's it. But you've got, they've each got a big corridor coming through like this. It'll do an interesting effect where it'll make it look like, if I just sort of draw this in quickly, it'll make it, these squares, when you've got them all together, will actually sort of offset the main square of each tile, which is these ones. Which I think will be a cool looking effect. So maybe that's what I'm planning on doing today. So let's go to our move tool. I'm going to check the... Okay, I don't want it in the pick or layer guide. The pick mode, I call this the pick mode. I don't want it in that mode, I just want it in the move selected layers mode, because the pick mode will just grab whatever is under the mouse, which can sometimes be a little annoying. But anyway, let's start with our stone floor. Actually, no, I like to begin with our walls. Here we go. So we've got these sort of rubble walls. I thought this had stone walls, plaster, catacomb rock floor, plaster wall overlays is probably what I'm thinking. Yep. Do I want to use those, or do I just want to use sandstone floor? Oh, no, this is probably what I'm thinking of. These ones. These sort of, they're sort of like a brick. It's not brick. It's more like a. You see old, like ancient buildings where it's made from stones that have been piled one on top of the other. That's what this kind of wall looks like. So let's maybe go with this. Well, let's just try it out. So we drag in this, and we're going to have a corridor, a 2 wide corridor up here. So actually, each of these will be a 2 wide corridor. So let's just put that in. Down here. Oops. And then over this side, we need to have one over here. And another one. There we go. And then down the bottom. So if I get these in first, I can sort of build around it. Or I know where, so that's where the entrance is from each map tile. So if there's another tile here, this is where they connect through. So this will be a quarter, this will be a quarter. So, and that's if I'm doing like a passageway all the way through. You don't necessarily need to do that. You could do something else. But for this one, I am going to do that. So let's. So if we put a doorway here into this quadrant, so let's zoom in. So we'll start down in this area first. Now, all of these need to go into my walls folder. There we go. And we need to plonk each new one in there. So because we're going to have a corridor go through the middle. And this close, you can actually see like the bricks, because I've zoomed back into the normal level that we view it at. So we need to have a cornerstone there. There we go. There's a cornerstone. Plonk it there. Now doorway, which is this one. Now, what am I going to do in here is the question. I could just make it a simple big room. You're going to have big rooms every now and then, big storerooms. So that's what we'll do. We'll have just a big big open space, which I can then later on fill in with furniture, like make it a storeroom. You know, put lots of, because my intention is with these map cards is to, like, I'm building it like this, but then the contents of each room I'm planning to 3D render. That's my intention. As to whether I actually get to that is another question. Since so many of my projects take so long to be completed, I'll get to the end. Who knows? I'll probably just build a ton of map cards like this. Because at the moment, if you're on my Patreon, you can actually get these right away. Like after I do this live stream, I turn these into WebP images and I upload them to my website, where if you're subscribed to me on Patreon, you can download them. You can get access to my members only area, and you can download these maps straight away, including the GIMP build file, where you get all the separate layers, and you can come back in and you can actually change this to be whatever you want. So we're just having a big room. Okay, so let's put the floor in. So we go to there, grab that, go back up here. Let's go to, what's the sandstone floor look like? That's the sandstone floor. So we've got rubble rock walls that look pretty cool. Then we've got plaster wall overlays. They look pretty cool. And then we've got catacombs floor. Maybe. We maybe use that because it's got lots of pit traps. I like pit traps. So let's get a 2x2. I think that's a 2x2 hole. Let's do this. Let's just put the 2x2 hole there. So there's wood over the top of it. Let's actually put it into our floor. Pardon me. That goes into our floor folder. So maybe this is an area where you know, maybe they've been holding people in here. So let's just build out the floor. But this is the good bit about these map tiles, is that you can, oh, itchy nose. You can chop and change. You can, that's a big piece, which I'll use it here like this, since we're going to be doing the entire floor like this. So like that. Helps if I read my files. So we're coming round to put that up there. Because I have to admit, I was actually thinking of using a brick floor, but I kind of like this. I like this floor. I like this floor with the big chunky stones in it. So there we go. So that's that room, and it has a big hole in it in the floor, which has been covered over with these wood. It's the have you ever done that experiment where you've got to bridge a gap with no nails, and all you've got is like 3 pieces of wood? That's this experiment. Okay, so that's that room done. Let's have a look at this quadrant. So once again, build up this wall. So let's go go back to our walls. Oops, too high up in the structures. We want the stone wall overlays. There we go. So I'm going to grab that one and put it here. So we're in our walls folder. But I'll make the entrance over here. So yeah, we had a bit of a. I thought my live stream today would actually be delayed, because I was helping parent wrangle Mum with the washing machine guy, because she wasn't happy with how the washing machine was working. So we've got a guy who can fix that. And he came out and he fixed it. And we discovered that there wasn't anything wrong with the washing machine. Fun. Okay, so this is a doorway coming into here. So we might do a little room, a little hallway to more rooms. How does that sound? That sounds good to me. So we'll do... no, I want a doorway there. So we're not going to need that one. Well, actually, we will need that one. It'll go there, in that spot. Then we grab this, and we go here. But since we're going to have a doorway there, well, that's my intention to have a doorway there. Oops. Snapped out of my fingers. But what else am I going to be doing? So, during the week, I'm going to desperately try and get the Trader's Way adventure module completed. It's just, I keep thinking of bits to add, and I keep getting distracted by other things. I really gotta not get distracted and not add more pieces. But I've been writing the descriptions for some of the monsters. You know, why are they monsters? Let's just, you know, let's have a look at that. Why are there monsters here? And the monsters that I've been making they're sort of they're sort of being pushed through evolution. Would be a good way for me to say it. They're being affected by. So firstly, the monsters are rats. They're giant rats. Like all good adventures, everybody starts out doing the grind of killing the giant rats. So they are giant rats. But these giant rats are slowly evolving. They're becoming rat folk. And the reason why they're evolving is because their warren or their society is built on the ruins. Put that down there. Okay. Built on the ruins of a magic user society who they did two things. They used to have a lot of animal familiars, and they petitioned another wizard in their society, and he made a couple of machines for them. And the whole idea of the machines was they wanted their familiars to be able to understand them and be more useful. So this wizard, because he was doing it for another project, he created a elixir that effectively grants these creatures understanding of complex ideas, and it grants them language. So, if you were a wizard and you had you had a familiar, your pet raccoon or squirrel or whatever like that. Now, as a wizard, you have a special connection to that, but the familiar is far more useful. Oops, let me just check on something. I think I broke something. No, the familiar is far more useful if sorry, where was my train of thought? The familiar is far more useful to you if your familiar can, in essence, converse with you, or understands you exactly. It's not sort of relying on telepathy or whatever. So it makes that familiar vastly more useful if you can just, they're like someone, having this conversation at the moment. So, yeah, he made an elixir, and then he made a machine that dispenses the elixir. So the wizards can bring their pets in and feed them this elixir. They actually pay. They pay, like, the wizarding community has they have a really rare currency system. So you pay this currency, and I'm trying to work out how to do it. I think what I'm going to do is the currency will be, it's a small, round, circular red crystal. There'll probably be two different currencies, like a red crystal and a blue crystal. And to the wizard who's holding the crystal, you could use the crystal as a source of energy for yourself, your spells, that sort of thing. And this is what makes the crystals. It's what makes the crystals rare, which gives them value, but also makes them useful, which also adds to their value, because it's something that wizards would want, but it's also something rare that not every wizard's going to just have like pocketfuls of these things, because they're difficult to make. So yeah, there'll be these crystals, and the wizards will pay with these crystals to upgrade their little creatures by feeding them this elixir. So the little creatures can eat the elixir, and then they sort of their brains mutate, go through a mutation where knowledge is pretty much just installed. And they suddenly they sort of overnight learn how to understand the common tongue. They learn how to maybe not speak the common tongue, because they've still got their animal body, their voice box and all that sort of jazz. But they can make noises. If your familiar's a parrot, it would learn very quickly how to speak to you, and you'd be able to carry an actual conversation with your creature. So yeah, it's something that was I using the sandstone floor? No, I think I was using this one. It makes the creature a hell of a lot more useful to the wizards. So yeah, they had this font, and it's called the Font of Understanding. So it actually becomes no, that meant to go on floor. I'm still learning to master the skill of talking and drawing at the same time. So let's have a hole there, and then we're gonna have. Let's grab down here. A bit of this. So so there's the Font of Understanding, where the wizards of this ancient community used to be able to, in essence, upgrade their little creatures. Like that. But when the community was wiped out, because most of the original wizard communities on the world of the cube, when they were, because they're all destroyed, they're all gone. When they got wiped out, I want to put another little. I'm thinking of putting a hoggle just here. We'll put it with put it partially covered. There we go. So anyway, yeah, so the wizard community got wiped out, but the font of understanding is still there. Now, the wizard who created it, he wanted to get paid for his works, so he set up a device at the entrance to the font that basically extorts. Whoops! I did not mean to do that. It basically extorts money from the wizards in order to use the font of understanding. So if you wanted to use it, you had to pay with this crystal sort of currency that they have. So there was at the opening of the shrine, because he made it as a little shrine, there is a pedestal. So what you would do is you would put onto the pedestal your payment, which is one of these little crystals. The payment would then sort of be whisked away. It would go off into the shrine, and then you could enter the shrine freely. But if you didn't pay your tithe, let's call it a tithe, there are 2 obelisks at the entrance to the shrine, and they have red crystals, red orbs in the top of them, and they shoot like burning rays. I think the spell is actually called burning ray. They effectively shoot that at whoever comes into. So like if you come within 30 feet of the entrance, and you haven't paid your tithe, you get zapped. You get burned alive. And that's how the wizard gets his. That's how the wizard gets his pay. He forces you to pay him for his services. And he has a little room inside the font, a little hidden room behind an illusionary wall, where the orbs that he collects are stored, because the wizard lives elsewhere in the world of the cube. He doesn't actually live at this community. He just did some work for them. So he comes by every now and then, and he checks to see whether anybody's paid him or anybody's used the font, and if they've used the font, they've left behind a payment. So he collects the payment. So he's not there all the time. He just comes by every now and then. But because here's the thing, because he got killed too years and years and years ago, the machine's still there. It's still running. It's still making the elixir. If you've got these little crystals, you can just walk up, put a crystal on the plinth, walk through the doors perfectly fine. You won't get lasered, and get access to to everything that's inside the font. But if you don't have a crystal, you have to get past these burning ray obelisks. So that's the thing. You need to get into there. And the rats during a thunderstorm many years ago, one of the rats called the Great Rat. He was called the Great Rat because he's one of the biggest rats around. He was like one of the biggest mutated rats. So he managed to find a way. Well, didn't really find a way. He sort of because it was during a thunderstorm, and he basically sort of stumbled inside the font, inside the shrine, to get out of the thunderstorm. And the obelisks were actually shooting him with burning rays, but he didn't get hurt because he was soaking wet. So the burning rays were kind of drying him out. Um, and they didn't really have much of an effect on him because he was, it was a thunderstorm and there's water going everywhere. So he managed to get inside. And while he was inside, the rat was sort of, did what rats usually do. He sort of had a bit of a hunt around, bit of a sniff, a bit of a snuffle, and he discovered the font. And he had a drink. Okay, where am I? Okay, back up to walls, because I want to put in the walls in the next quadrant. Here we go. So I'm going to do this quadrant up the top here. Top left. Okay, but anyway, continuing my story. So the rat got inside, and he's snuffling around, and there wasn't anything to eat in there, because the machine's been sitting there just making elixir for hundreds of years, without anyone coming in. So there's lots of dust everywhere, and there's the elixir in the font in a bowl, and there's elixir in a bowl, because there's two bowls, one on the table, one on the ground. Because obviously, if you bring in your pet dog and you want to give him the elixir, you just bring him over to the bowl on the ground, and he drinks from the bowl on the ground. And during the night, the thunderstorm continues to rage outside, and the great rat, his mind starts to mutate. He starts to sort of understand things, and words start to form, and complex ideas, which rats aren't really used to that sort of thing. I think I'm using these walls. Yep, there we go. So yeah, he starts to freak out, because he's having, basically, think this is a rat having a really bad acid trip. That'd be a way to think of it. And yeah, his mind is starting to evolve. Well, it's being forced to evolve. It's being pushed through evolution. So he's not feeling so good. He's feeling rather queasy. And the walls of the shrine to the great rat, start to look like they're melting. The whole shrine starts to look like it's melting, and the great rat's sort of like, oh my goodness me, I can't stay in here, or else I'll be squished by this melting building. Obviously, the rat's hallucinating. The building isn't actually melting. It's the potion, it's the elixir having an effect upon his mind and changing his mind. So he's hallucinating out the wazoo. And the rat's sort of like, okay, I've got to get out of here. So he once again, he runs out of the shrine, runs out into the forest. The obelisks don't laser him to death. Well, actually, they try to laser him to death, but again, he's wet, and there's rain, and it's not really working. Because when the wizard built the obelisks, he didn't really want to kill his fellow wizards. That came later. It was more a case of, I want you to pay me money for the service that you're buying off me. So the obelisks weren't really made to kill; they're more made to just burn people and stop them from getting inside. So they didn't really. Yeah, it's sort of hard to explain. But anyway, so yeah, the great rat escaped outside. His mind started to change. And I'm going to use that piece in there. Yep, there we go. So his mind was changing, and he was learning. He was effectively undergoing a lot of change, which is a big thing if you're a giant mutant rat. And he he huddled down under some trees and was sort of regretting his decisions. And then, the night passed, the storm went away, and then the next day dawned, and the rat sort of uncurled and sat up, and he's like, oh, I felt a bit crap during the night. What the hell did I eat? Oh, I'm wet. I'm soggy. I need to dry off. I need to start a fire. Make a fire. Hang on. I'm thinking. I have words. And and the rat, the realization that the rat had complex thoughts, again, freaked him out. As, think about it. If you were a rat and you started thinking that fire was a good thing, you'd probably be going, oh, what the heck? But anyway, long story short, the rat gains intelligence. And he goes on to sire other rats, other giant rats, who can walk, talk, and... Oh, if I just... Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the map that I'm building at the same time that I'm talking. Okay. So, let's get back here. So yeah, the rat discovered that he was smart, and he started to grant that he didn't really grant it. It was something that got passed on to his next of kin. So whenever he sired a little ratty, that little ratty was a smart ratty too. And let's grab some of this. There we go. Yeah. So it was he was breeding a new species of intelligent ratties with each generation. But there was a problem. The effects of the elixir really only seemed to get passed down one or two generations. And I think I've gone... Yeah, I don't want to do that. I was going to have this be another room, so that can't get used. So yeah, unfortunately for the rat, the intelligence was only being passed down one or two generations. It was sort of a random thing. You might have a little ratty, but he's only half as smart as what you are. And then if he sires another rat, the intelligence is even dimmer. So they weren't all that smart. And the son of the giant rat, the great rat, as he became known, proclaimed himself king of the rats, and that the forest was their domain. But unfortunately, in the area that they were living in, which was the ruins of this ancient, a couple hundred years old wizard community, where the machines were still on, and the reason why the rats were growing huge, and I'm talking about rats 2 feet tall, which I don't know whether you've seen a rat. 2 foot tall rat is a terrifying thing. And I'm speaking as someone who at a party, was walking around with somebody else's pet rat sitting on their shoulder. So, I think that was sitting on my shoulder, 2 foot tall, the size of a bulldog, would be scary, scary, scary. It'd be like meeting a coconut crab for the first time and not knowing that coconut crabs exist. And if you don't know what a coconut crab is, Google it. They are terrifying. but interesting at the same time. But anyway, back to my story as I build my map, and I put these pieces in the wrong folder. See, this is what happens when you get so into talking about things. Stone wall. Yeah, they're right. These bits here should not be here. They should be in. Come up the top here. They should be in here. I think that's my walls folder. Yep. That's my walls folder, so they're in the right place. Because I had, let's have a look here, I had pick a layer on, which is not what I wanted to have on. So let's go back to the walls folder. Okay, so let's put the floor in for this piece. We're using the Catacombs rock floor. Here we go. Something interesting I could do is I could put so there's little holes in these little alcoves. Yep. So there's holes in the floors in these alcoves. There we go. Pardon me. Oh, goodness. Yeah. I'm dying. There we go. So, where was I with my story? So yeah, the rats are living in the ruins of a magic user community that existed in the early days of the cube, but during one of the civil wars, they got exterminated. They all got killed. They all got dead. But the machines that they were using for their experiments are still there, and one of the main ones is that they had because their main thing that this community worked on for everybody else at the cube is that they made silk. They made some of the best silk ever invented. And how they did that was that they actually enchanted a grove of fruit trees, of different fruit trees, because they managed to get different insects from across the multiverse. So I'll use this one. Come over here. Okay, so they managed to get different insects from across the multiverse, and they enchanted the various trees. Well, they didn't really enchant the trees. They enchanted some obelisks that they built a grove. So think of it like this. They built a grove where they planted these trees, and then they had a stone brick lining, so like a little containment fence. And as part of this containment fence, it was enchanted to make the berries and the fruits larger, more fruitful, more useful, and to in turn accelerate and enlarge the grubs, the silkworms that would feed upon them. So the silkworms then, because they were bigger, they had an accelerated life cycle, they produced more silk that the weavers could then use. It was also enchanted silk, so they could enchant it. They could make lots of really cool garments out. So imagine having silk gloves that are fire resistant, that you could pick up burning hot metal with these silk gloves. That would be very, very useful to wizards who are making magic items. So that's what these wizards were doing. They were making silk for the other wizards of the world of the cube, and they were using these enchanted insects. But when they all got killed off, the fruit groves that they had created were left in place. And all of the, the silkworms just continued doing what they do. They munched on enchanted fruit. They spun their cocoons. They hatched. They turned into butterflies. They flew away. They came back. They laid more eggs, turned into grubs. So on and so forth. The plants kept growing in the confinement of the. It's not effectively a machine. It's more like a purpose-built garden bed. So yeah, the garden bed was still there. It's still enchanting these trees. It's still making big fruit. It's just the fruit's being eaten by more than just the silkworms these days. Because back when the wizards were still there, or the silk weavers were still there, they would make certain that the things that only ate from these trees were the silkworms. They'd keep everything else out. So now, and they'd look after the silkworms. But now, nature's doing what nature does. And now the silkworms were being eaten by things like praying mantis or birds, or in this case, rats, who themselves started to be affected by the enchanted fruit. They started to grow in size. They started to mutate a little bit. So they grew in size. They mutated. They became bigger. They'd be able to walk on their hind legs. And I'm putting these tiles in the wrong folder. Okay, stone wall. They need to go up here. There we go. So back up the top here. Okay, so now that I'm in the correct folder, I'll continue my story. So yeah, the rats have been eating the fruit. They've also been eating the silkworms because the rats. And other things have been eating the silkworms as well, like birds. So there's some giant birds out there. You go out there and find a giant swallow that flies at Mach 1. So yeah, it's one of those problems that the machines have been left on, but the wizards who made the machines, they're all gone. And now this is what's happening in their stead. Oop, what's happening? Here we go. So yeah, the rats are getting huge, and now that they've had the great rat who's been fed from the font of understanding, and he's starting to breed big intelligent rats, you're starting to get rat folk. But the intelligence is really only lasting 1 or 2 generations down from the great rat. And the rat king, who is the son of the great rat, has realized this, and he knows, because his sire told him the story of how he became intelligent. So the great rat's worked out, okay, there's this elixir at this shrine that we choking on my words. That if we get this elixir, we can make each generate. We can feed it to each generation that is born, and continue to be smart. And then we'll grow, and our society will grow. And we'll be intelligent and big and smart, and everything will be good. But they have a problem. They can't get into the shrine because the obelisks at the shrine burn them to death if they try to get past the obelisks. And unfortunately, they don't know, like the Great Rat never knew that he survived getting into the shrine because he was wet and there was a thunderstorm going on. You know, he hadn't picked up his intelligence at that point in time, so he didn't put two and two together. And the other rats haven't put two and two together because they're smart, but they're still rats. I need that. Oops, where's it going? Oh, there it is. So, yeah, they need to get into the shrine because they need to get the elixir. What they really need to do is they need to work out how they can get into the shrine but keep getting into the shrine. Like, just freely access the shrine whenever they want. And, spoiler alert, how to do it is how the wizards paid in the first place. Because what the Rat King's going to do is he's going to start raiding travelers along the Traders' Way road, the merchant road, and he's going to offer to our intrepid adventurers a deal. Help him get access into the shrine, and he will give you some treasure from that he and his rats have found, left behind in the ruins that they live in. But he will stop attacking the traders on the road if you help him. So that's his trick. That's his ploy to get some help. There we go. There's another little piece. So let's switch over to our rock floor. Here we go. And let's make certain we're putting it into our floor folder, because I'm pretty certain before I wasn't. So I'm going to do an interesting little bit here. I'm going to have a pitfall just there, which means if you want to get around here, you've got to go through that. But then the question comes, should I make this room take this doorway out so that you've got to go around here, around here, around here? Yep, I think that's what I'm going to do. So let's just quickly go back to our walls folder, change the mode of the brush so we can grab that tile and that tile and get rid of them, and then change the mode of the brush back, because as good as the pick option is, I find it just, there's too much of a chance that you'll just pick up the wrong pieces. So we'll drag in this piece, put that there. Oh, going to have to get rid of these end pieces. So that one, oops, and that one. There we go. So that's looking the way it should, and then we need to put that in there. So that way you have to come through here, through here, through here to get into here, which forces people to go across this pit trap. I like that. Okay, back to the floor. Here we go. So yeah, the Rat King, he's going to basically extort help from some adventurers who will be our adventuring party. So in order to get him to stop attacking traders on the road, the adventurers have to get access to the Font of Understanding and help him. So initially, because they don't know that they can basically keep going in if they do this, if they work out how the lock works. But if they'll get the adventurers to go in with a big bottle where they want them to fill up the bottle with the elixir. But if the adventurers work out that if they find the back room where the wizard who created this machine, where he's been keeping the little crystal orbs that other wizards pay for the service, pay to access the service, then all they need to do is basically take the crystal orbs, give them to the Rat King. All the Rat King needs to do is put a crystal orb on the plinth, which will deactivate the obelisks, which will allow him into the shrine, where he can then drink from the elixir, or each generation of new rat can drink from the elixir and gain the intelligence. And then all he's got to do is go out to the back room, pick up the orb that he's just used to pay, and leave. And then, each time he needs to use it, repeat the process. It's all good. But the case is, with the adventure, with the way that I planned it, you've got to work out that that's how it works. So, spoiler alert, I just told you how the adventure works. So I hope. So that's actually the next one, the next adventure I'm working on. The current one, the Trader's Way, is where you meet the Rat King, and he gives you the offer of the job, of the adventure. So it's up to the characters. Like, the characters just turn around and go, "No, we're not going to do that." Hopefully the players are not complete and utter Burks. Whoops. Hopefully they'll work it out that this is actually a good deal and go for it. Because the Rat King will also give them treasure. He will give them equipment that he has scrounged from the settlement and from passing traders that he's robbed. So it'd be a good way to, for the characters to get equipped, is to do this side quest. And also, it's all experience points. So why not? Why not help out the Rat King? Help him make his people smart again. We'll have to give him little red hats. Make the rats smart again. What would that be? MRSA. Make rats smart again. But anyway, this map is, as much as I've been rambling about the stuff that I'm working on, this map is slowly getting finished. But yeah, no, that all the Font of Understanding is actually the next part of the adventure. The one that I'm working on right now is the Trader's Way, which is more of a story introduction. It's got a lot of characters that basically do story dumps. They sort of like go, I see you've got coins in your hand from the world that you came from. Well, unfortunately, they're not actually worth a lot now, because every kingdom in this world, its sovereigns have its own coin. And some places don't even use coins. Or it might be, the walking automation from the very first part of the adventure. hit the one of the characters will actually tell you, if you start trying to beat it up and destroy it or break it, one of the characters will be like, don't do that, don't do that. If you break these things, they summon other machines which will kill you. So don't harass them, or don't harass this one. The other machines, sure, fine, do it somewhere else, but not this one. This one will summon another machine that will cause you a lot of pain. But yeah, okay, so there is this adventure map. So if you imagine putting these, if you took this map that I've just made and you put a duplicate side by side, there's a big corridor here, and there's a little quadranted rooms. So that's the idea that for this sort of level. And I might make, so I'll save this one. So let's go File, Save As. Where's my projects drive? Into Dropbox, because that's where I save everything. Into my projects folder. Now doing this in Pack Builds, Map Tiles, Endless Dungeon Crawl, Underground Structure. So let's call this. So this will be Necrotech Underground. Let's call this Catacombs. So Catacombs Underground Rooms 0. Yep. Save. And then I'm going to export export as, and let's make it a WebP. There we go. WebP. Underground Catacomb Rooms. There we go. Export. And we get the little export menu, and we do that. So later today, I'll upload this new map, and you'll be able to play with it. Use it in your adventure. But for now, for the moment, let's actually... So let's go and get rid of all these pieces, because we'll use this template to make another map. Donk. There we go. So it's blank. And one thing I'm going to do to make certain that I don't accidentally oversave what I've already built, let's rename it to Catacombs Underground Rooms 0001. There we go. Okay, so what shall we do? So we've got to do the corridor. So let's start with that. Okay, so we've got a corridor here. And it's a 2x2, so just like that. And over here. Like that, yep. So yeah, the Trader's Way is what I'm working on at the moment, and it's taking way too long to get done, because I am getting disrupted a bit. That's sort of what happens when you look after people. There we go, and down the bottom, there we go. So that's our entrance between each of the map sides. Okay. So yeah, it's one of the problems of looking after people is that you get distracted on a lot of things very easily. And my ADHD probably doesn't help. Yeehaw! So what I might do. So this comes in. What could I do? I'm trying to think of how I could do this. Because I want to have a room in the middle. That's my thing. So let's pop this room in the middle in. So it's going to be a pretty big room. So about this size. So 4 by 4. Like that. Actually, hang on. Where's the center? That's the center. That's actually down here. Is it there? So this is too high. Is that right? Or is that the center? No, these are offset. That should be right. I made these 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, okay, that's right. So that means that goes up there, that goes up there. That goes there, and that goes there. Now, I don't want to have these just go straight into it. I think that'd be, like, you know, I could do that, but why? Like that. And like that. Then these could go straight in like that. Yeah, I might do that. So the interesting thing about this will be a room, or the way that this sort of goes together is it bisects the map, which would force people to go around, like so. And then that does that. Like that. No. Already used that piece there. So we have to use a different one. There we go. So if we do that, and put little cornerstones in. Like so. There we go. So there's a center sort of corridor like that with a bit of a room in the middle. So then I'm thinking for these, maybe make these lots of little rooms and corridors out the side. So what we could do, here's an interesting thing. Instead of having these like that, it just comes straight into corner pieces. Like that. And then we could put in a wall, so a corridor. So there'd be a corridor along here and rooms. I like that idea. So we'll do that either side. So the last doorway could be here. So yeah, the Trader's Way is... it's going to be sort of an info dump. As I've written a lot of narrative material for a number of the characters, or some of the main linchpin characters, that they will provide this information, like for example, telling the players about the differences in currency, giving them sort of saying there are don't trust a compass. Magnetic north in the world of the cube is not magnetic north. It's actually just the center of the cube. It's the center mass of the world of the cube. So your compass point isn't... it's technically pointing to north because that is the magnetic north of the world of the cube, but it's not... it's probably not the north that you're thinking as in direction. Like that. And this piece goes up there. There we go. And then we'll have rooms. So we're going to go 2 rooms here and a big 3x3s here. So these could be like little rooms coming off of the sides of here. I like the idea of that. So let's go and put these together. Where's that going to go? That's going to go there. Yeah, so following magnetic north in the world of the cube will just lead you to the center of the cube, which could be what you want to actually do, because there is a quest, which I'm thinking of, where you do want to get to the center of the world. Because I've got this idea that the original ruling council of the world of the cube, they have a special meeting place where all the different heads of the different schools, because basically the cube is a giant school. It's a school and research faculty, really. It's where all these wizards over the generations basically did their research. And they did some pretty... like, there were, on the world of the cube, there were no limitations to the research that they could do. No ethics board saying, no, you can't do that because we don't like mistreating animals. For these guys, it was like, you want to do that research where you cut up their brains every day? Sure, fine, go for it. Just don't make a mess. Yeah, so the world of the cube was created by unscrupulous wizards who really didn't want to answer to anyone. Would be a good way of thinking what these guys are. So yeah, there ain't no PETA on this world. There's no board of ethics telling you, don't do that, that's really horrible science. Especially if you're the poor test subject. Like the wizard who created the font of understanding, he needed to learn how the mind stores information. So let your little mind run rampant with the disgusting ways that a wizard who is not held back by morals is going to find out how the human brain stores information. Yeah, yuck. That's the kind of wizards this world had. So obviously, after several generations, they had some really horrible wars, or civil wars, where they used their disgusting magic knowledge to wipe each other out. And that's why the world of the cube, there's all these civilizations that are basically in pristine condition, but the inhabitants got wiped out, and they got, they were left in pristine condition because the other wizards were like, if we can just kill everybody who's here, we can get their stuff. And so, it was fun times were had by all, except if you were, getting exterminated. But that's the world of the cube. If you didn't have all this fun, bloodthirsty destruction, then you wouldn't have these interesting places to explore. Gotta have a bit of death and destruction to make an interesting dungeon. Well, how boring would how boring would this world be? So this is coming along. Hopefully I've put everything in the right folder, which I will check in a jiffy. There we go, like that. So that's that. So that's that. So it's sort of like, so this corridor here, it allows passage between the different sides, but it sort of bisections this area. So it makes something, don't know if I'll do exactly that, but something a lot similar down there. Actually, I'll start putting the floor in, and I'll make certain that oh mate. Oof. Oof. Full body sneeze. Ugh. Okay, so we're looking for catacomb rock floors. Rock floor. And I've got some little 2x2. So we use those to quickly make the floor in these rooms. Just like that. Now, pit trap here, pit trap here. That's what I'm thinking. Make people work to get into these rooms. So let's have a look down here. So one of them will have really, it's all covered over, just like that. The other one, it's just a hole, just like that. And then we fill them in. So yeah, the wizards and witches and gods that created the world of the cube, not very nice people. They're kind of big bunch of dicks. And all they cared about was exploring all the ins and outs of magic. So they created the world of the cube as their own little private pocket dimension where they could do anything and everything that they wanted. And they did some pretty nasty, horrible things in the course of their experimentation. As I said, the guy who created the elixir of understanding, he, to put it politely, he spent his time chopping up human brains and extracting knowledge to make his elixir. And he did that with over several generations of manufactured beings. Because one of the things that the wizards did is they wanted to have, they're busy doing their research. They don't want to do the cleaning. So they created an entire species of servant. Those servants, and eventually those servants went on to kill them all. Because the servants went, no, we don't want to be... Being servants to you guys is kind of bad. You guys have a horrible talent for killing us. So, as a preemptive strike, we're just gonna kill all of you. Because you're dicks. And no one's gonna worry about, a bunch of wizards suddenly disappearing because their creations rose up against them. It's the typical juxtaposition that you create a slave race and the slave race rises up against you. Ask the Romans; it's happened to them. That's where you have the stories of I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus, and so's my wife. Okay. I'm looking after a little puppy dog again. She's just at my feet. She's sort of like going, are you going to be finished soon? I'm hungry. Feed me. Feed me, Seymour. Feed me. Okay, so... what could we do? Could we do this again? So we could have pit trap there. A pit trap here. That's covered over. And then... just go and fill it in. Yeah, you have a snooze on your bed. I'll be done soon. So we'll just fill in this corridor to this large room. Oops. What I will do is I will use these 2x2. I'll put this one down there. This one over here. And then fill in the room with bricks. Yeah, this map will be available for download later today, where if you want to use it in your adventure, you can download it and edit it. If you own because this is the dungeon map, not dungeon map tiles, this is the catacombs map tile set that I'm using. You could download this map and edit it yourself. So you could go and change, like you could close off this wall section here, and actually, I'm still in the floor. Good, because I put everything into folders, it should be pretty easy for you to find. You could just go and edit out the walls to be whatever you want. Okay, so I've just noticed that I've accidentally picked up this layer. Let's put it back where it should be. There we go. Okay, let's go back up to the top. Go back to our walls folder. Let's zoom in. Pardon me. Let's do this by quadrant. So... I like the idea of having the corridor come in a bit. So let's do... So let's have it come into... How to do this? Let's go something like this. So we'll have a wall like that. And then we could actually... So I am going to get rid of these. So we're going to need a cornerstone to go right there. And another one. Just right down here. So we've got our entrance. Then we will have our wall corners come here. So we'll have a doorway here and here. So this sort of becomes like a big foyer. Well, actually, one thing I could do is we could put pillars like this. I'll show you. So it's like it's a room that's held up by pillars. See, that's why I don't like the pick mode of the move brushes. You can pick up, you end up picking up layers you don't want to pick up. So if I come back up the top here, switch this back to the normal mode. So it's only going to move the stuff that I actually want to move, that I actually have selected. Then I want to do this one, goes there, and then use the doorway tiles to just quickly. So these would be, you know, like pillars holding up the room, like that. So the cool thing about pillars is that when you add in dynamic lighting, you get long shadows from each pillar, which looks, well, I think it looks pretty cool. Okay, so we come back around, then so I'm going to make this basically in 2 rooms. Like so. And as you can see, it's just a simple case of drag and drop. almost done working out this, so we just need to cornerstones. There we go. So there's such rooms. Oop, just need a cornerstone right there. Yep, there's 2 rooms there. And do something similar over here. You could just make it a big room, but actually what I could do, no, get rid of that, could just do some dead ends. And these could be actual catacombs. Or it could be jail cells. Like that. On the other side. Yeah, these could be jail cells. And this is the jailer's room, or the... So this could be where they're keeping... You know, keeping people for interrogation. And over there's the jailer's room. Or maybe over the other side is the interrogation chamber. I'll have to get some. Have to make a 3D model of of the rack where people get racked. They get stretched out. Ooh, that popped a muscle. There. And that right there. There we go. Okay, so that's our walls done. Time to put in the floor. So yeah, so the Trader's Way, it's coming along, but I keep finding bits to sort of add in. I think I'm sort of at that point where I've got to stop adding in pieces. And oops, wrong folder. I want this floor. There we go. Yeah, I think I've got to sort of knuckle down with what I'm writing. Stick to the... Because I think I've been adding in story elements that belong in the font of understanding, but kind of also belong in this adventure module, because the characters in this adventure module are, you know, are for also from the font of understanding, the next adventure module. But because at the end of the Trader's Way, you've got 2 options. You know, you could take on the Rat King's mission, or you could, you know, basically sort of turn around and say, get knotted. I'm not working for a giant rat. And not do his mission. and, you know, run away. Which means he becomes a protagonist later on down the track. But hopefully, people will actually take on his mission and do the next part. Actually, what I could do... Hang on, let me grab this piece here. Pop that there. Put pit traps in here. So that it then becomes something that you've got to hang on to. You've kind of got to hang on to the poles to work your way around the pit traps. That's an interesting idea. Same as this. Hang on, I wanna move. Put that over there. No, I don't want to put a pit. If I'm putting pit traps in here, I don't want to put a pit trap in there. At least that's my thought. But how about this? So if we put like that. So we have one there like that. Then we have an open hole. So we do that. And then we just have, you know, normal bits of brick. Like so. So it means that you have to sort of climb around these poles, hanging onto the brickwork poles to get around these pit traps. Like that. So let's go and fit it to a window. And there we are. Boom, boom. Well, thank you very much for staying with me, listening to me gas bag about what I'm working on. I hope you've had a lot of fun. There we go. And don't forget that if you want access to... Oops. If you want access to the stuff, let's just save as, and I'll put a little B there. Yeah, if you want access to this material, join my Patreon and you can download this stuff, you know, in an hour or two's time. Thank you for watching. I hope you've had a lot of fun, and I will catch you in the next Monday. Bye for now.